Time to get into a conversation, and we are with Moses Mbuthia, who's the chairman of the Kenya Volleyball Federation Nairobi branch. Mbuthia, welcome to KBC Channel 1. And the reason we're speaking about this is there is the SASA holiday camps that are taking place. They target the youth in the sport of volleyball. But before we do that, maybe, Mr. Mbuthia, there is a conversation that's been there, and not many people may have picked it up, is that but at last weekend's Kenya Volleyball Federation playoffs, is that the scoring this time round was not manual, where you've got somebody making the, the calls by word of mouth as somebody tries to keep up with them. You were using what is known as a volleyball information system. You could tell us why the KVF brought this in.
Yes, that's we simplify it by calling it VIS, and we have experts in that area. We have Patrick Owino and we have Geoffrey Omondi, who actually trained in Egypt, and we did sit down and agree with the president and the whole NEC that this time round we're going to go digital. And I can tell you, anybody who managed to get an award, be it MVP, best broker, it was all from the VIS. And this, we said, we would rather go digital. We are facing Cameroon in January, and we have to use any method to make sure that we are armed and set for what is ahead of us.
By any means necessary, that's what you're saying. And what changes does it bring into the way, for example, the national team is selected in that case?
There was nobody who raised a question, even those who were awarded, because we use the system. You cannot pick your friend, you cannot pick your sister. The system says it's so-and-so who was the best broker, who was the best setter.
Now, these things are done behind the scenes. It's people who do this as they do this kind of scoring. So tell us about that scoring and how it works, because you've got what, four
setup cameras with computers, but of course manned by a human set. We have 14 trained VIS experts in this country, and we decided to employ all of them. They're never seen by the cameras because they're busy working behind those banners. And their work is mainly to make sure that as the master of ceremony picks up the microphone in the evening, he does what exactly happened and picks up the best.
Eventually, what does that mean for players? Because, I mean, it has to be consistent. For example,
we are not going to fall back because we have, as I've said, a trained expert. And as we are talking right now, we have a course going on in Maputo, that is in Mozambique. Though we didn't send some few people, we didn't send anybody, but I have said we have 14. Those 14 are also training others in this country. And your question, to answer it directly, we are not going to fall back. We are going to go the VIS system.
Well, that's just the introduction of technology into volleyball. That is the standard way of how things happen when it comes to volleyball. In the world, it's used at the World Championships. So any scoring is not, determined maybe by somebody missing out or confusing numbers. Let's move on to matters to do with the youth. The SASA volleyball camp. Why was this brought out? I know it's a holiday season, the longest holidays that you probably have. Why introduce the SASA volleyball camp? And you started in Nairobi.
Yes, from where I come from, we believe that if you have a herd of cattle, and that herd of cattle has no hay farm, then the chances of that herd of cattle thinning down and completely disappearing, very, very high.
That has resonated very well in Narok.
Yes. Out of that, we've been able to set up a number of camps. Nairobi branch, we have ours at SASA. We looked at the catchment area where we have young ones who are a bit idle during the December holiday. Talked to one of the father and one of the church, that is Catholic Church, and this gentleman is from Herzegovina, and together with a teacher from Brown Hill, we were able to set up a camp of about 25 young ones. We were able to give what we could as a Nairobi branch, and also the Catholic Church did help. And that camp did carry on very well for 2 weeks, and we did break the camp the day before yesterday. It was very, very successful.
What are the aspects you look for in the camp? Because when I look at youth development, and if you look at the school system, it's mainly on the technical aspects of the game. What was the focus?
Well, one, we had to look at the catchment area, as I mentioned. We had to look at those young ones from Kayore and the adjoining areas, and also look at, if you have your history, if you have your facts right, you may notice that one of the schools that does very well in volleyball in Nairobi is the Brown Hill Secondary School. It was number 2. And the kind of look at the area where they can get the feeder. And this primary school that are within that area, they all combined and were put in the camp. To answer again your question directly, we had to look at a number of things. One, the availability of these young ones from the parent. We had to involve the parent. We also had to involve the administration within the area. And number 3, we had also to look at the height. These days, volleyball, you look at, yes, you have to look at how that young one is taking off. And we also have the case of Ribeiro, where we also need the short ones. But said and done, we had to look at all those factors before putting those young ones into that camp.
Outside of volleyball, what other skills were being imparted? Because you have to have a holistic athlete these days.
Definitely, I don't think you have gotten it right. Because here, you've seen church-based. And so there's a bit of teaching, and then life skill had to be inserted, and so many other things, including even the teaching, because these young ones have to exchange notes from their schools, and so it is, as you have said, it's a holistic kind of approach, because you cannot train a young one from morning to evening. Yes, those breaks that we also have to bring in, counselors, they are counseled, and life skill, as I mentioned.
So, and one of the things that anybody would ask who's doing work at the grassroots level, maybe as a volleyball coach, what is required of these teenagers? You talk about 16, 17, 18-year-olds.
Well, the requirement, as I've said, is one, first is the interest. Do these young ones really want the game of volleyball? Why volleyball? So we have to look at it from that angle. Then we also make sure that we give a lot of hope for these young ones, and we look at those who have played volleyball, have they gone up to the professional? The answer is yes. We have quite a number of these young ones in this country that have gone playing professional volleyball outside. The latest one being Sila Kipruto, who just left the country the other week, and he is in Saudi Arabia, play professional volleyball. As we call these young ones into that camp, in the preamble, we have to bring a screen. If you are a volleyballer, how do you go up? Does it pay? And if so, what are the examples? So we had to do all that in the intro, when we're doing the intro.
Okay. Now, what has happened is that this model has taken off elsewhere in the country.
Yes.
I'll go Marakwet, I think you're targeting.
Yes. Starting all the way from Lokchogyo. As we are talking, we have the chairman of Transwest, Mr. John Wambaya. He has a course going on in those sides of Turkana, starting from Lokchogyo, going down to Western Kenya. We have in the slopes of Mount Elgon. We have it in Cheptais Boys, and also we have Kaptama, of course, headed by one man called Cherem, who is doing a wonderful job. And going down to Sirisia now, we also have one in Namwera. Namwera did very well, went to nationals, and produced the best beach volleyball boys who represented our country in Huye, Rwanda, and they even won. So you can see. So I'm just giving an example starting from the north. Coming down that way, we had one in Nyandarua, which closed down today. And one of our resource person was none other than Patrick Owino, who is the former captain of the national team. So we also make sure that the resource people who go there are also knowledgeable people. The one of Nyandarua in Kinangop, in a place called Donyonjeru, had about 19 young ones, and it was very successful despite the rains, and we are not complaining. We had to ensure that they are on tarmac, and that happened under the tutorage of John Bugwa, Aka Gishuma. They did a wonderful job. Students from Abadea High School and Raida from Kinangop. I'm trying to come down up to where we are now in the city. I did mention about the Sasa Academy in Kayore, and of course schools like Kwadhanse. You don't expect them to be sleeping at this hour, being the defending champion. Now you go down that way, Marava boys also from the other end, I forgot. They are in the camp trying to recruit because they want to make a comeback. Remember, they have not featured for the last for the last 2 years. And so they want to make a comeback. And down Cheptil, they're still on in Left Valley. And going down that way up to coast, we even have a championship that is going on in Kilifi, courtesy of the chairperson, of course, Madam Mududa, remembering the gentleman who was the vice chair there by the name Kemboi.
Now, as you mentioned about that, that is volleyball, as we know it, the six-a-side contest. Then there is beach volleyball. Kenya won a silver at the African Games.
Yes.
So that means, like your preamble said, is that if there's no heifer in a hat, it's going to die. So besides Naomi Toa and Gaudensia Makoha, who are basically the core of the national team, what's being done for the youth?
Yes. Well, first, let me take this opportunity to thank those who did make it in Rabat. Happened to be the team manager, and we were the first people to win the silver medal, courtesy of Gaudensia Makoha and Naomi Toa. Naomi Toa did she had a problem during her playoffs, and I think her ligament, she has a problem as you're talking, and we are telling her over over the screen there, get healed soon. Get healed soon, because we need you in World Cup preparation, not World Cup, but the Olympic preparation, which is going to take place in Tanzania. To answer your question directly, we have NOC, the Olympic Committee. They have come up with a very successful course in Rukenya. I happen to have been there because I had to take my team of 6, that is of 8, 4 boys, 4 girls, from all over the country. And we have very good coaches there. And Joy Fromondi and the gentleman who was in Rwanda for 8 years, that is Sami Muringe. They are the ones training those young ones in Rukenya. So we are doing it all, and my guess is as good as yours, that in few years' time, we're going to be a powerhouse, both in beach volleyball and the conventional volleyball.
Now, here's a conversation that very many people would like, that has come, especially after Paul Bitok took up the national team and spoke about the coaching methods that were there. He came in and changed the whole system of play of the Malkia strikers. It was evident the score sheets, the results still may have been something different, but what are the new conversations that are being brought, especially to these youngsters, so that they pick up with the times?
Well, I would not actually attribute it to Bitok per se, because we have also other technical people like Rungaho, who is the technical director. But Bitok's coming, Bitok has a charm, and truth be said, he has a way of interacting with these people, and he's able to give results. But the backup is too heavy, because we have Joseph Baraza, we have Rungaho, we have Manara, we have Catherine Mabui, we have, name them all. We have a dozen of coaches, and also statisticians. And all these people are very important, and they produce now. At the apex, yes, Bitok will be there, but we have got the backup. I've said, as we are talking, our main worry is one.
Cameroon.
Cameroon. And
but Cameroon were beaten in Japan by Kenya, in as much as you'll be playing at Cameroon.
We also did beat them in Rabat.
Yes.
But why don't you also go back to the history? You know what happened in 2 other instances.
Yeah, but prepare yourself mentally and let noise be a part of the game.
One thing we said, whether they want us to play in the desert, in the water, under the water, we shall be there. They were able to manipulate, sorry to say this, they were able to manipulate the office of the CAVB, and we had robbed it to host these Olympic qualifiers. Until last minute, that exactly some minutes to noon, we had put our bet at 8.2 million. But before midday, the Cameroonians decided to put 8.5. And this was, I should say this was a plan by the president of the CAVB and the management of Cameroon.
Well, strong accusations, I would have to say.
I can go to an international court of law, if not Hague, to prove that.
No, all right. Okay, the deal was set, but that's volleyball, the plans, whatever is happening all around the country. Be sure to catch up if you're a youngster interested in volleyball, or if you're a coach interested in volleyball, working with young people, then you know where the action is happening. Thank you very much, Mr. Mbuthia, for being with us this evening. And also, on behalf of my co-anchor, Purity Museo, and the team that put together this bulletin and our sign language interpreter, who has been Lucy Mwaura, I want to wish you a good night.